Hey now, welcome to The Exchange with KB, where we get to know interesting people and their thoughts on entrepreneurship, building and scaling businesses, success and failure, and much, much more. If you like this episode, go to www.kirillbensonoff.com and sign up for occasional email updates. Today, we're speaking with Asger Folmann. Asger is a fascinating character. He's an actor, influencer, entrepreneur, writer, composer, and scholar. All right. Hey, Asger, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kirill.
Cool. It's really exciting to talk to you. You're doing a lot of different things. So I'd love to learn a little bit about your background first, and then we can go through and talk about specifics that you've done, talk about crypto, talk about acting, talk about all these cool things that you've been up to. Whereabouts are you now?
So right now I'm in the Los Angeles area, or Topanga Canyon, more specifically.
Cool. So tell me, how did you end up in LA? Tell me a little bit about your background, your childhood.
Right. Okay. So I grew up in Denmark, Scandinavia, in the countryside, very rural, very, like, when I think of it these days, it's almost like thinking back to the distant past. You know, it was a different world back then. It was before the internet. It was actually even kind of before the personal computer. But
it's magical. I'm imagining like small magical looking towns. Am I right?
Yeah, probably. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but yeah. How did I end up in the U.S.? I guess the short answer is I ran into an old girlfriend. Actually, my very first girlfriend from like back when I was 13, and she moved to the U.S. I guess like 12 years ago. She was on holiday back home in Denmark, and you know, we ran into each other, and some stuff happened. No further details on that. But she invited me to come and see her in LA, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready for a change. Let's go to LA and check it out. And I did, and I ended up marrying her. And
wow. That was a good move then.
Yeah, it was a good move. Absolutely. It was a win-win-win situation, kind of. But so I guess I found myself over here waiting for the paperwork to come through. You know, waiting for the green card to come through. You can't work legally. You can't really do anything that earns you any money. So what I did was I took a master's in psychology, and I started working on various business projects, and I started acting too in like student movies and indie projects and stuff like that. And once I finally got my work permit, I did work a few jobs, but I was like, I'm not here to work another corporate job, right? I could do that in Europe. Now I'm here. Now I'm gonna make something from it.
Do you think that, I mean, was your thought when you came to the U.S. that U.S. is a place where you can potentially make something on your own, do your own thing, so to speak, and is that kind of what your thinking was, or does U.S. I'm trying to get a perception of like what you thought before you came here, maybe?
Right. That's an excellent question. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. I didn't come here with the mindset that, you know, yeah, I'm gonna pursue the American dream and all that and become a billionaire. And so that was actually something that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that this was more a case of me finding myself in a new environment. And my then girlfriend, now wife, she asked me, I still remember she asked me one day, why don't you take up acting? You love acting. Because I used to pursue that just a little bit back in Denmark, you know. I was like, yeah, I guess I could take up acting. But, you know, I think it was more that type of process where I gradually realized, oh my God, I'm in this crazy place where the entire world comes with a suitcase full of dreams, and you know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. And do you feel that I mean, obviously Hollywood is a place where everyone goes to become an actor or try to become an actor. Does it permeate the local scene? Is acting, do you see that all over the place or no?
I'd say yes, but it's not only acting. It's showbiz in a more general sense.
Right. And how, so I mean, how do you reconcile it too? Because some say, and I'm not sure that I agree or not, but some say the arts and the business are not necessarily a combination that the same person could do well at both ends of it, right? I mean, you have a business guy who runs the money side of it, and you have the sort of the creative who runs the creative side of it, or does the creative side. How do you reconcile the two? Are you and do you feel that you're more of a businessman or more of a creative, or both?
I think so. 2 years ago, I would have said I'm a creative guy, period. But I'm actually, these days, I guess you could even say it's a realization I had recently. I think it's a new tendency that we're seeing, that people can actually, let me rewind here. So there's like the old world mindset, as I sometimes call it. It's it's very prevalent in Europe, but it's also prevalent in most places in the US. And the old mindset tells us, you work one career, you focus, you spend those 10,000 hours on something and become an expert in one field. But I think we're moving away from that. Not, of course, obviously I'm biased because I'm moving away from it. And I gave it some thought, and people told me, oh, but you can't be an actor and do business. People won't take you seriously. But you know what? That's what I am. I am an actor, and I do business, and I feel like I'm pretty good at both. So, and even, and this is by no means an invitation to make this a political conversation, but even just the president that we currently have in the U.S., right? He was a reality TV star, right?
Right.
And I think we see more and more that there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Pena. He's one of my big business inspirations, but he's like, I guess he made the vast majority of his money on oil. Now he lives at this castle somewhere in Scotland and does seminars for 20 grand for a week. But it's very fascinating. But he's moving into social media, and I think he's even planning on doing a reality show as well. So we just see this. It's a new tendency. It's taking the world by storm. But I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? You're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think business is an art in a way. I look at it. I've always thought about it. There's a science behind a lot of it, but it's also an art, because I feel, personally, I feel like I'm not a great, painter. I'm not a great, I think I could actually be a pretty good actor, because I like that, but I never got into it.
Right.
But some things I think I could be pretty good at, but I feel like I'm drawn to business because it has a creative component. You come up with an idea, you develop it, and then you move it forward. So, and then obviously business, as it matures, right, you have a startup, and that's the creative piece. Then you move into like a more of a corporate, growth stage. And at that point, whether, some people might still say that that's creative for them. For me, I think it's the early stage, the startup. And then like when it gets a little bit bigger, I would ask for someone else to step in and start running.
Well, you have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you actually, and I'm one other thing I wanted to mention about your acting before we move on. I'm going to put up your demo reel, if you don't mind, for our listeners to look at afterwards. And because I was actually really impressed. I think you have an interesting look and the personality that I think is really cool. So I'll put that up if anyone's interested. You guys check it out. And one other question: you are written down that Arnold Schwarzenegger is your role model. Can you tell us why?
So yeah, I guess he was. So I don't have many role models. I don't like fan culture. And but I just really admire, his journey, I guess. And I know he is a mainstream thinker, and I like to see myself as a contrarian. But at the same time, he does exert influence where it matters. He's been promoting green energy, and I love the way he framed that. He coined it, right? It doesn't matter whether you believe in global warming or not. The future is, you know what I mean? But it was just selling really well. And and he's been really making a stand against what do they call it? Gerrymandering, how they pretty much manipulate election districts from election cycle to cycle. And he's been trying to make a positive impact with, but he was just so consider that, and then watch Conan the Barbarian, right? He's just come such a long way, and I really admire that. And I guess he's also an example of what we were talking about a minute ago, right? Someone who's not just, he's not just an actor, right? He's a governor. I really have to hold myself back to not to do more impersonations of him, but please forgive me. But I don't know. He is an inspiration. He's just
I agree with you completely. I mean, I think he has. I remember growing up watching like the first Terminator. I think it was when I was a kid, right. And it actually happened to have been because this was back in the Soviet Union at the time when I was growing up there, and we had very little to none access to Western movies at the time. This was like 80s, late 80s, And so I remember this was like one of the first movies that made it across, and it was completely fascinating to watch. And I knew the name Schwarzenegger, but I didn't really know anything, and I was also young. When I came here, he has this, obviously the persona that he is, the actor, and that whole, the whole look and feel of what he's been doing. And then to make a jump from that into becoming a governor, and I mean, he has done great things, and he's truly an inspiration. I mean, he was an immigrant. He came to the U.S. in his, I believe, late teens or 20s or something like that, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, and he's done, I mean, extremely well for himself and made a real big impact on others as well.
Right, and that's another thing. I don't know. I'm assuming, obviously, you and I probably had quite different upbringings, but I'm still assuming that since we both grew up in the European continent, we probably both had this, well, I don't know, this is something subconscious. This is like, what's it called? The collective unconscious, I guess. I feel the collective unconscious where I grew up very much tells you that, everyone's equal. Doesn't really matter what you do. Every work is important and all that stuff. But I think Schwarzenegger is just really a demonstration. He's proof. He is walking, living proof that if you really put your mind to something and put in the work, give the sacrifice, so to speak, you can have it. And I think that's what inspires me.
I completely agree with you. Speaking of happiness, I know that Denmark is actually supposedly one of the happiest places on earth.
That's what they say. That's what the statistics say, right?
Did you, growing up or now going back and forth, which I presume you have some connection to that still, these days, is that something that you can quantify? Why do people feel happy, and why are surveys coming back such as that Denmark, people are happier than in other places?
It's a great question. But first of all, I do want to be a tiny bit critical towards the whole survey design. I'm a social scientist, and I'm also a previous employee at Gallup back in Copenhagen, Denmark. Okay. So I know how the way you construct a survey, you can pretty much manipulate people, not necessarily in a conscious effort to, distort the results, but you can really come up with some, you can just manipulate people to, yes, I'm happy. Of course I'm happy. What are you implying? Why wouldn't I be? So I don't know. I'm not ruling out completely. And I've had this conversation with a lot of fellow Danes, actually, because we were as shocked as the rest of the world to learn that we were number one in happiness, I think. But I don't know. I think there are so many factors. It's really hard to tell. And it would be obvious, of course, to say that, everyone has social security. You don't have to worry about medical bills, only dentist bills for some reason. And, education is paid for. But at the same time, coming from that system and that security, and then going to the US. So I did a master's back in Denmark, and then I went over here and did another one. But honestly, I could, my level of motivation for the degree that I paid for out of my own pocket, I cannot tell you the difference it made.
Definitely.
So, which is weird, right? It should be the same, but just for some reason, when something is granted, you obviously start taking it for granted, and then you take it less seriously, and you don't appreciate it. And I'm not saying I'm all for, U.S. capitalism all over the world. But I think there's something to be learned from both those systems.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time thinking about the social structure of the different systems, having grown up in sort of a socialist type of a country where it didn't work obviously over there. Now in the U.S. it's capitalism, and it certainly has its problems, and it works with problems. Now in Europe, places like Denmark, I mean. It's something in between those two where people do have that safety net, and at the same time they have the freedoms and they can do their own things. And I always remember, I think it was Tony Bourdain, his show that I watched at one point, and I think he was in Denmark, and he was asking someone something about how happy they are and why are they happy, and and the answer was they gave a long answer, but one thing I remember is they said here taxes are not a bad word. Meaning that, if you pay more taxes, people are more apt to pay them and not complain and say, okay, the money I'm paying, that goes to others who are in need and they're happy to share. Or
so that's a really fundamental difference, right? Whether the basis of your thinking is what's good for everybody, or whether it is what can benefit me.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of.
So Kirill, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself as a capitalist?
I think for me, taxes are not a bad word either. to a certain degree.
For me, it has.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm not. I don't want to go down like discussing the politics specifically, because I think it's a whole other conversation. Right. I'm happy to have it at some point because I love to talk about it, but. I think that personally for me, I think at the core I'm a capitalist because I do have the core, the drive to succeed and sort of the desire to quote unquote make it. And I think a lot of the other stuff that makes America great, right? Because people come here or are born here and they are driven and they have goals and they're trying to reach those goals. On the other hand, though, I do think that there are certain things, and I'm not for like a big government. I don't think a government is functional. I think governments are dysfunctional, and the money that they take from people to sort of feed themselves and pay themselves constantly. And, that's a huge problem. And we have huge governments. We have huge regulatory oversight, and just too many things that prevent entrepreneurs from being entrepreneurs. Because at the end of the day, and I just had this conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, but at the end of the day, all this regulatory stuff, and we can jump into crypto after this, I think, because it's kind of leading that way. But if we think about crypto, right, at the end of the day, all the regulation and all the stuff that's been happening, the entrepreneur is the one that pays for all of it on both sides. So they're paying the attorney. If we talk about like ICOs, that's been, sort of the hot topic lately with regulation and whatnot. So ICOs, they pay for the attorney to do the ICO. The attorney tells them this is how you do it, and it's all right to do it this way. They follow that advice. Then a year later, they come to find out that the SEC says, no, this is not the right way to do it. And now you got to go hire an attorney to defend you. So, and the SEC is full of attorneys themselves who are, on the payroll of the same entrepreneur who's paying taxes. So it's a broken system, I think.
So I think so we can absolutely agree on the fact that it's a broken system, regardless of who's behind the wheels, But I do think a very important point, and I have this conversation every now and then with my friend who's also a fellow entrepreneur. But and he will sometimes say stuff kind of in the vein of what you just said, that that entrepreneurs need more favorable terms to work on, and we pay the bill and all that stuff. But I can't. So I'll be the devil's advocate, and then I'll say yes, but you got to remember that you and I and the other entrepreneurs, even though there are more entrepreneurs in the U.S. than any other countries, as far as I know, might be wrong, but not everyone has that dream. We are, in fact, a minority. So if we say change legislation so things are better for us. We're really just being selfish pricks here, and of course, everyone has to look out for their own best interests first and foremost. But still, I think it's a two-edged blade. I would love for entrepreneurs to have better working circumstances in the U.S. and everywhere, basically. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of big multinational corporations just moving from tax haven to tax haven. And, I know in Europe, it's standard practice that the big corporations, Nestle, I believe is one example. So if they earn too much in one country, they physically ship assets from, for instance, say a branch in Poland to a branch in Germany.
Right.
Just and then they purchase it from some shell company, and then they just ship it right back. But just it's just tax evasion, big time.
Yeah.
So I'm all for you and I evading taxes, Kirill. But I just there's like a certain limit to it.
Absolutely. No, and I think I think tax evasion is wrong no matter who does it, right? Whether it's a person or a corporation, everyone needs to pay whatever they're due to pay. And I completely agree with you. It's a double-edged sword in terms of us entrepreneurs saying, hey, we need more of this or more of that, less regulation, more freedom, or the opposite, whatever is more convenient, right, for that specific person, whilst the rest of the folks out there, they're not in the same boat. They may not know as much. So I think it just has to be balanced. I'm also a big believer personally in the market. Markets there has to be some regulation, but maybe I'm more on the light regulation side of things.
Right.
And then maybe even self-regulation. So for example, we have like in the financial markets, we have FINRA, which is a self-regulatory organization which self-regulates broker dealers and people like that. So in crypto, we don't have anything like that. It would be great if we did, that there would be a body that was comprised of companies and would put out its own rules and work in tandem with the SEC or CFTC or whoever it needs to be, and sort of regulate itself, because who would know more about what the industry needs other than the players in that industry, right?
Right. That's true, but still there is. I still think, and this could be said about any financial market. I realize that, but I do feel that the crypto markets are governed by greed. And as long as, like, even so, we do have not the regulatory or self-regulating bodies that you're asking for, but we do have, for instance, like the Ethereum Alliance and sort of centralized, decentralized organizations or groupings of people or whatever you want to call it. But who are they really looking out for? That's the question, right? It seems very self-serving at this point.
You could very well be right. I mean, there's certainly a lot of greed in the space, as is in other places. But there certainly has been a lot of different unkosher stuff going on in the past couple of years. So tell me, how did you get into crypto? I mean, is this something you've been doing for a while? Tell me the background, how you got in, and then we could talk about things you're doing now also.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock to, this might be a little bit off, but I think around 2010. Mm-hmm. I was living with my ex-wife back in Copenhagen, and she had this friend. I guess he needed a place to stay, so he stayed. His dog Plato and him, they stayed with us for a little while. And he was a very intelligent guy, but also a little nuts. And I remember one day I came home from work and he told me, "Oh man, Asger, did you hear about this new virtual currency?" "No." "It's called Bitcoin." And he kept talking about it. He was kind of like a tech enthusiast, and I wasn't at all at the time. So he kept rambling, and I actually remember thinking, I am totally not getting into that. Sounds boring, right? But these days, I'm not really in touch with him anymore, but he does have a lot of exotic photos on his Facebook, you know. That was my first encounter with Bitcoin. And then December 2016, I worked a corporate job at DreamWorks Studios here in Los Angeles. I was working night shift, and I had a lot of spare time on my hand. I was looking into making some investments. You know, I've been investing a little bit in stocks, but I was like, no, I'm investing peanuts here. You know, it doesn't make, I'm not looking for a 1-2% ROI, you know, even if it's in a month or two.
Right.
I need much bigger returns, and I'm willing to take the risk. So I looked into Ripple, as XRP was called back then. And I tried for a long time to invest $2,000 into Ripple, but you know, I couldn't. I simply couldn't manage to do so. You know, lack of technical expertise, lack of will and determination, I guess. And turns out I was writing back and forth with Kraken, you know, the exchange Kraken. Mm-hmm. And they was, oh yeah, it should go through now, you know. And it turns out I learned months later that my bank blocked the transfer. So that's why it never came through. And that money would have been worth like a little over $2 million today. Wow. But so I made the investment, way later and way too late. So that was like the first time I actively tried to invest in crypto.
And back then there wasn't that many options, right? I mean, we didn't have
no. I think there was 50 different cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Maybe
not crypto and the places, you know, where you could send fiat and buy crypto. I mean, there weren't that many of them either, right?
No. Fiat to crypto gateways was that was a nightmare.
Yeah,
back then.
Yeah. So that was and what years was this about?
So this was 2016.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you've actually heard about Bitcoin quite a while ago, in 2000.
Oh yeah, I did.
First, because I heard about it, and I heard and bought it in 2013, just sort of as a hobby, as you know, something to try. I ended up meeting a guy in just here locally in the Boston area, and basically, you know, through local Bitcoins and just buying 5 or something like that Bitcoin from him directly. Nice. And I thought, like, wow, this is
like $20 worth of Bitcoin.
It was a little more than that, I think. But still very inexpensive. Though, who knows? It may not look inexpensive for much longer. I don't know with the markets going.
Right.
You know, but I didn't keep it for that long. I got rid of it at some point.
Right.
But so let's fast forward, and then how did you decide that you wanted to do more there, be more than just an investor or a hodler of crypto?
So I guess summer of 2017, I had just landed my first bigger role in a bigger movie. It hasn't come out yet. But we were shooting up in Redding, California, and I was there for almost a month, I guess. And I had a lot of days back to back when I wasn't on set, so I had a lot of spare time on my hands. And I'd been having this idea about starting a YouTube channel, but I wasn't really sure what topic to talk about. And then it struck me, you know, I've been sitting here reading about cryptocurrencies, trying to wrap my mind around this whole thing, and there doesn't seem to be too many people talking about it. So why don't I try make some videos on that? And I promised myself to just follow one rule, like, because there was a lot of things I didn't know, and I was very aware of the fact that there was a lot of things I didn't know. But I followed one rule, and the rule was just don't say anything that you're not certain of. So just better to just leave out information if you're not sure. Just talk about stuff that you're pretty sure is true. So that's what I did.
So the first foray was in the is it basically in the YouTube video. Is that how you got started?
That's not. So this was after I started investing in it, obviously.
Okay.
But that's how I decided to go into the sphere. And from the YouTube videos, what I did 3 videos because I knew I had to do a couple, put them out there. Nothing really happened, but one of them was on Verge. And when Verge blew up, I guess a couple months later, that video got a lot of views. And I noticed, and I was like, okay, I got to strike while the iron's hot. I'm gonna start producing content now, regular content. And I did, and I'm not even sure what inspired me to start publishing what has become the Folmann Report, the investment report I publish sort of once a month. But I started it out just as a free newsletter type thing, and I told people on this date, I believe it was like actually pretty much this date 1 year ago, could be down to the very exact date. But and then I told people in advance I'm gonna start charging for it on this date, blah blah blah, and and I just kind of enjoyed it. And I guess I have the training writing academia, which makes it a little easier to write financial literature, quote unquote. I'm not sure. I'm straight away from your original question.
No, that's great. I want to find out exactly that. I mean, to me, it's like this is like the classic story that I love to talk about. I mean, you're essentially an immigrant. You came to the U.S. and you got into something that you had no idea about, in the beginning, right? And nobody did either. It's a brand new market, and
right.
And it was kind of, you saw an opportunity, and you, as you said, struck while the iron's hot. And now, I think the YouTube channel is definitely over 50,000 subscribers, and it gets good engagement. People obviously like what you do. What's sort of the most interesting experience you've had, or what do you remember about doing your videos? What was the most fun or interesting thing that you've done?
Oh man, there's been a lot of ups and downs, but I've really tried to actually. This is something I learned. I think most people who put themselves out there on social media or in any sense probably. But once you start doing it, initially you look at all your videos, you read all the comments, you're thinking about why is he saying that, and what do they mean, these people, and what content should I be doing, and all that stuff. But these days I really try to. Of course, I want to engage with the audience, but still, I'm always asking myself, okay, so what's the next video about? Don't sit here and dwell on this. It's really about. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess it's a lot of realizations has come from putting myself out there, so to speak.
And what do you think about the market these days? It's obviously, I think overall what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are leaving the space, whether they're investors or just onlookers. Right. And even as we were talking, I was looking at some of the videos, and it's not just yours. I think it's across the board, right? So if we look at, a year ago, there was just a lot more people looking and viewing the videos than there
absolutely.
are now, right? And it's completely natural. It's a bear market. But what do you think? I mean, is this a good thing for the space, a bad thing? What are your thoughts on what's going on now?
Well, I'm sorry to give you this answer, but it's a good thing and a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's a bad thing for obvious reasons, but it's a good thing because the more we crash now, the more the next bull run will resemble the bull run we saw in 2017.
And do you think that that's a healthy thing, or something that you would want to see again? Because I talk to different people and I hear different views. Some say that, I think more of the traditional financial folks will say that wasn't a healthy appreciation of an asset. They would rather see it going up slower. And some say that, hey, no, we think that, it's still early, so it should go up quickly. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess it depends on whether we're talking healthy in terms of, I absolutely understand where those people are coming from that say it's not healthy. It's not healthy if we're looking at a very big perspective, if we're looking at the crypto market as an organic kind of system, that needs to grow, and right now it's going through its teens, it's causing a lot of trouble, but so in that sense they're right. But at the same time, the mechanisms in play in 2017 made me a lot of money and made a lot of other people a lot of money. And one observation I did in Q4 of 2017 was that whenever I saw people with a traditional financial background trying to make educated statements about the cryptocurrency space, they were almost always wrong.
What do you think is next? I mean, do you think that cryptocurrencies are going to continue to, after the bear market, do you think they'll thrive again, or do you think it's turning into more of a security type of a market, or more of a, an asset that's like a, store of value, like Bitcoin could be? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think both of those. I think, well, I don't know what I think, but I know that I think there's a lot of criticism going on about this whole move towards a security market, but I think it's a really, really good thing. I think that's exactly what we need.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about legislation here. I don't care about, we can call it whatever we want. That's not important. But I think it is important that companies can legally, this is just an example of an abstract use case, but the companies can legally share their profits with the investors, because otherwise it's just, why would you invest in it?
Tell us a bit about your book. Can you give us an idea what it's about?
Right. So I call it Spiritual Capitalism, and I do two things in that book. One is I list 3 rules or doctrines, as I call them, and I honestly think that if you follow these 3 doctrines, you will be successful. It's an entrepreneur book. It's and I really mean that. And number 1 is just to understand. I'm not going to sit here and outline the whole book, but number 1 is really just how you can understand, come to terms with truly realizing that if you have this dream of achieving more, right? If you have the entrepreneur dream, basically, you have to do it. You have to start working right fucking now. I'm pardoning my French here, but something else I did in that book was, I've been reading a lot of entrepreneur literature, and some of the stuff out there is so brilliant. There's a lot on growth hacking that I like, but some of it it's just the same book being written in a new manner again. It's 7 Happiest of Millionaires, and it's Richest Man in Babylon, and Napoleon Hill. It's just those same. It's just rewrapped, rebranded, repackaged, and there's a lot of cliches. And okay, so I'm going to bring this one up. I spent quite some time in my book, attacking this whole follow your dream. I think that's a really stupid advice to give people, honestly. I don't know. What's your take on that? I'd love to have a discussion about that.
To follow your dreams?
Follow your dream.
I haven't thought deeply about it, but tell me. I definitely have heard others say it. I never really took it to heart, so to speak.
Right.
So, and tell me why do you think that that's a?
No, I think there's like this. There's multiple ways of saying that, like find your passion or do what you're passionate about, all that stuff. But I think it's rooted in a misconception or in a misunderstanding that many entrepreneurs, many of the billionaires we see on TV and social media, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett, all those people, they are successful and they're passionate. But that doesn't mean that their passion made them successful. You know what I mean? You just described it like 30 minutes ago when we started talking. You were saying something like you love like the startup phase of building a new company. It's like that you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. Me too, but I'm more passionate about building stuff than I necessarily am of the topic that it's in, or the sphere that it's in, or the industry.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm interested in crypto. I'm highly interested in crypto, but is it my passion? Do I love crypto? I don't. To be
right, and that is so great that you're saying this, and I can completely agree with you on that level, because I think that tells me you're a true entrepreneur, where you're passionate about building, you're passionate about making a difference, whether it's crypto, whether it's, acting, whether it's whatever you decide to, writing, whatever you put your mind to, you're passionate about that. You don't have to stay passionate about it for the rest of your life, right?
Right.
I mean, you could be passionate about it for a year, for 2 years, for a month, whatever it is.
Exactly.
But you are passionate about building and about making a difference. I mean, I think that's awesome. I see what you're saying. I mean, I agree with it. I mean, there's a lot of phrases being thrown around.
There is, right.
And what do they really mean? And what do people, when they listen to that, what do people take away? I mean, I tend personally I don't spend much time like listening to Tony Robbins or someone like that. It doesn't do much for me personally. What does something, again, it's my personal opinion. I'm sure he helps a lot of other people, inspires other people. But for me, it's more about, getting some kind of value out of what, like Warren Buffett, how did he become this value investor? How did he become great?
Right. So I agree with that. And I love that you bring up Warren Buffett, because a few years back, I had like, this guy's fascinating. You got to dig a little deeper, right? But the one thing that he never mentions anywhere, I've never heard him use the word put options, but that's nonetheless how he made the vast majority of his money. You know what I mean? But he doesn't even tell people about it. He just keeps talking about this whole, just invest in something you understand. That's what I did. Just Coca-Cola and McDonald's and railways. But there's always a hidden agenda.
That's true. I mean, I think that a lot of the people that have already made their money in the sort of the classic legacy financial space, right? And a lot of them are. And Warren is extremely smart and has done really well for himself.
No, he's definitely one of the good guys.
Yeah, he definitely is, right. And I think he has intentions are very, very good, and he does try to teach people. I agree with you in saying that, hey, it's as simple as buying a stock and just holding it for your lifetime.
Right.
Well,
right.
I don't think it maybe it was that simple, and at some point I just don't think it's that simple anymore today.
No.
Right.
But that's the thing, Kirill. It's because people conflate these concepts that have nothing to do with each other. So number one, investing. Like if you're managing part of your own 401k or whatever, of course you should buy some blue chip stocks. Of course you can listen to Warren Buffett or even Tony Robbins for that. But at the same time, they are trying to inspire people with entrepreneur dreams. But the advice they're giving is really only good for people with corporate positions, the way I see it.
Yeah. Well, they're addressing the general population, I think.
They are, exactly. They're mainstream players. That's
right. Yeah, cool. So I think we're almost out of time here, so we'll wrap up. It was really fascinating talking to you, Asger. We'll put up some of the links to your social, so you have In It for the Money YouTube. You have the Folmann Report. We'll put up links to that. Anything else is going on? When is your book going to be out? How can people find it?
So all else equal, it'll be out in 4 days, and it should be on Amazon. And it's called Spiritual Capitalism.
No, great, excellent.
Which takes some explaining, but we can talk about that some other day.
Sounds great. So I believe by the time the podcast will be live, we'll get the link from you and we'll publish that as well. And again, it was really awesome talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you too. Real pleasure talking to you, Kirill.
Great, thank you.